What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Tonight in Haddonfield and Beyond. A little brief rebranding of the show here that you'll be able to find on Tuesday nights. What we've basically done to recap off the top here is we've taken what was Tonight in Haddonfield and what was the Legacy of Star Wars and morph them back into a little show that basically we used to call Fandom Empire Live, only now Tonight in Haddonfield and Beyond. This is the Tonight in Haddonfield portion of the show. Special start time this week. Normally going forward, you'll be able to catch us Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern. Sorry, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and roughly the first hour of the show or so is going to be Halloween content, horror content, movie content. The Penguin is coming out soon. That's something that we'll be covering on the channel. We have a plethora of Halloween, I guess, editorial style videos coming out. Was working on one tonight with our, or earlier today with our friend Matt. Um, Also had contributions from Mike Bish, Braden Timmons, and others. So be on the lookout for that. In fact, dropping in the next day or two, we have the true story behind Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which we all know is Johnny's favorite Halloween film. But
Slander. Slander.
um, we just wanted to sort of go back to our roots and certain events allowed this to happen, and here we are. So we're going to enjoy every Tuesday night. Now, if there's a lack of Halloween news, then the show might be more Star Wars heavy, might be more, we might even get into some wrestling talk. But on every episode, there'll be some sort of Halloween and or horror discussion. Lots of big things planned. I was talking with, by the way, other people that'll be a part of this. Once in a blue moon, Mike Bish will be popping his head in. Kieran's going to be here fairly frequently. Matt Whitfield will be popping in once in a while. I believe Tommy B will be popping in. So this really is I guess, a launch back in time to the Fandom Empire Live days under a new name, new rebranding, a different show layout, but very much in the DNA of what Fandom Empire Live was. First up, Johnny, how's it going, man? Your thoughts on the change? Obviously, we've been doing our show elsewhere, and now we're back here. And I know you won't always be part of the Halloween portion of the show, but we have you for quite a bit of Halloween content coming up between now and Halloween.
Yeah, you bamboozled me. Um, it started with one and it's multiplied times over. But no, I'm happy. I love horror movies. It's that time of year too. Everybody loves the spookies in the fall, so it's the perfect time of year for it. For me, it's the time of year when I love watching horror movies. The leaves are changing, the nights are getting shorter, longer. Sorry, and it's just fun to watch the spookies.
I was about to say shorter. Did you move to the other side of the planet when I wasn't watching?
Yeah.
All right. Also joining us, he was the co-host over at the Legacy of Star Wars. He'll be the co-host here. You can catch him every Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We got a bunch of content coming up with him as well, and he will also be joining some watch parties for us coming up from September through. Believe it or not, our watch parties won't stop in October just because of scheduling. They'll run through the month of November as well. But it's Randy. What's going on, man? And thoughts on the new format?
Not a whole lot's going on. Obviously, personally, I'm happy football season's back. So that's going to be a lot of my uh, focus on other nights doing that. But here, I mean, I think I think it'll be fine. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I actually get to stretch my horror chops a little bit because I haven't really done a whole lot with you guys in terms of the horror side of fandom. So it's going to be fun. Uh, I've already been starting my horror movie watching. Uh, Actually, finally saw Thanksgiving. Finally watched the Fear Street trilogy. Uh, I'm trying to just kind of get myself ready because for me in October, I'm actually going to do a binge. I'm going to do the Hammer horror films. That's going to be my Halloween binge, one movie a day at least. But other than that, man, yeah, I'm excited. I'm ready to definitely dive into some horror stuff with you guys.
As I try not to choke. Let's just go over some of what we have coming here, get some housekeeping out of the way. Actually, why don't we talk about the topics we have tonight? Um, Halloween gaming news. We're going to touch on the Call of Duty news. Also, touch on something I heard about the upcoming Halloween game from Boss Team Games. Halloween watch party lineup, which we're not doing every Halloween movie. We need to save some material for the non busy months. We're also going to talk about the passing of a true legend, James Earl Jones, and to honor him, we're going to do our top three Darth Vader lines towards the end of the stream. Um, or they could just be like dialogue scenes. I wanted to avoid saying top three Darth Vader scenes. People probably go to him choking someone out or a lightsaber battle. And I really wanted to focus on the James Earl Jones portion of it. Just a true legend who, lived a full life clearly. But still sad to see him pass on. And, he touched us in, just more than Star Wars, and we're going to get into some of that tonight. Um, our multiple, I guess not our multiple choice question, but our question for this video, whether you're watching live or after the fact, is what is the most rewatchable Halloween movie? Not your favorite, which might be the most rewatchable. Maybe it's not though, because some are deeper than others. Not what you think's the best. Which one can you watch the most frequently? Two probably slightly controversial picks that I would throw out there, even though I haven't watched either in a long time, would be Halloween Kills because it's just like mayhem for most of the movie and a ton of deaths. And we mentioned off the top, we have a video coming up on it soon. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. It's the train wreck that just keeps on giving. I know there's people that like that movie out there, and all the power to them. But for me, that one's a tough watch in terms of if you're watching as a Halloween fan. But if now I can't do this anymore, obviously, but I sit down and smoke a joint or whatever and watch Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. There's lots of laughs in that movie, that's for sure. But let us know what you think is the most rewatchable Halloween movie in our live chat and or in the comment section down below. Also check us out on social media. Facebook's the Legacy of Halloween, or X, it's at Haddonfield Beyond, BYND. And again, we have the true story behind Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 releasing in the next couple of days. Big thank you to everyone who did that. And a big shout out to our channel sponsors, Backtrack Cinema, Jesse Storytime Spectacular, Kaulignation, and Matt. Really appreciate what you guys do and allow us to come out here and make the content that we make. All right, let's dive into this. First up, fellas, Michael Myers is returning to Call of Duty for the first time since, I suppose, Call of Duty Ghosts. Now, let me get this one out of the way first because there's some people that I've seen online on X and on Facebook that were worried that this was the other game that they were talking about that was announced. Let's squash that right now and say it's not. Johnny, I'm going to turn it over to you for a second. What exactly is this?
Well, as far as the Halloween element of it, it's just that. It's a Michael Myers skin for one of the characters already in the mask. So it's not even a new operator. It's just a skin. That's it. I believe it's for Kortok, I think, is who the skin is for. So you'll obviously have that character as well. Overall, it doesn't bring much more than that. From what they've said so far. Now, obviously, once the season comes out, there could be new additional things. In the trailer, you obviously see Michael with the knife, but there's no mention of the knife in any of the new materials for new weapons or things like that. But it is featured both in the graphics and in the trailer. So I assume that somewhere his knife will be included somewhere in the package, whether that's a skin for the melee knife or something else altogether. I can't say for certain, but yeah, it's a Cortax skin, and it is part of the mainline season pass. So if you can complete the season pass, battle pass, whatever you want to call it, you can get to Michael at the very end. So uh, unless you pay for the season, then you can jump ahead and do all that other stuff. But if you just play the game, grind the game, you can get to Michael. But you can obviously you can get him day one if you want to pay for it.
Randy, your thoughts on this, man? Does this do anything for you at all? I mean, I know you play some Call of Duty. I haven't played Call of Duty consistently in a long time, but it does intrigue me if we do get something more than just skins with this. Otherwise, I'm not saying it falls flat, but leaves a little bit to be desired for me. Although I'm picky when it comes to games.
Well, unfortunately, this is your typical Activision sort of thing when it comes to uh, content, especially when now, granted, this is going to go through Halloween and into the release of Black Ops 6, which is fine. But ultimately, you know, you're going to pay your $10 or whatever, how much the battle pass is now, and it's you got to just grind through it. You got to be really dedicated, and the fact that you have to wait to the end to get Michael, kind of a little bit of a slap in the face. I'm not gonna lie, but that's just how it goes. Obviously, you're getting other skins or operators, or I would assume some of these are going to be operators, some of these are just be skins, but because they've done operators from like Diablo and things like that before, that they weren't skins. The same with anything from the boys; those aren't skins; those are actual characters you can use. But the one thing that I will give them credit for is, as we're getting closer to Halloween and spooky season in general, they're having something for it, which is something they've always typically done. And I've always enjoyed it. I remember back in the day, uh, I think we were talking about Ghosts, that they had that one swamp map where you would pick up a contract, complete it, and you become Michael Myers for the duration of the match, killing people. And with one, with just stabbing at people with your knife, going around. And then that was a lot of fun because you'd hear the music and you'd be like, "Oh shit, where is he?" But beyond that, unfortunately now it's such a money grab with Call of Duty that it makes it really hard for me to get excited for it. Because what's to say they don't have a bundle in the shops for you to just straight up buy it rather than just earning it like a lot of people are going to do? And that can rub a lot of people the wrong way. And I think that's kind of the uphill battle Call of Duty's been facing lately with the release of their the content they have, their microtransactions and things like that. There's been a couple of games where you had to do anything and everything you could to get, like, say, these ultimate skins because you completed all these challenges. And this past year with Modern Warfare 3, they just said, here's this skin, pay $50 and you get this skin for free, that people in previous games had to spend hundreds of hours on just to acquire it. So it's that sort of thing that kind of worries me, because now that they've reintroduced it as a skin down the road, what's to say they won't put it in a bundle in the shop, and people who actually ground it out in Modern Warfare 3, that maybe they don't get a chance to use it in future games, because I don't know if they're going to keep going with what they've done with their headquarters. But yeah, it's to me, it's just concerning. But that's because I've seen the good and bad of Call of Duty, and it just right now I'm just kind of not in a good space with it. So, but I mean, if it's fun, if it's the game modes are fun, I might pick it back up just to give this a shot and see if I can unlock them.
Yeah, microtransactions for me, which have always obviously been going on for a very long time now at the forefront, but really took me out of gaming because of adulting, right? Like You got other priorities. I still remember when Star Wars Battlefront 2 launched, and uh, the second one, not the original. Important distinction there. And it was just impossible to unlock people. They had the things so ungodly high, or it became a microtransaction thing, and it was awful. It wasn't just that game. There's so many other games where microtransactions, um, just are at the forefront. Yes, R.I.P. to the great James Earl Jones, indeed. Um, and for me, they've hurt gaming a lot. I'm very skeptical about what to spend on money or spend money on in terms of gaming now. It's not that I don't miss gaming; I do. I'm just picky about it. Like the only games I've played for the last several months is really, I've played some like kid games with my kid, and then I've also played like Gears of War 4 with Johnny and him, and Formula One, and that's not even the newest Formula One, right? Like it's the gaming market has just gotten so insane. Like if you have the ability to keep up and continuously buy new games as they release, good on you. But if you have like for example, Call of Duty. If you go and get that for the PlayStation, up here in Canada, what's that, Johnny? About $100 after tax?
Obviously,
And
depending on the version, yeah.
yeah, and it's significantly more in some cases. Or at least if you have Xbox and you're paying for Game Pass, you get Call of Duty, the base game, which is a nice thing now. So like for me, Game Pass is worth it just to be able to download certain other things. As my cat makes a cameo, didn't even know she was there. Um, but yeah, no, I don't know. Gaming for me is really kind of taking a hit. I want to shift gears here slightly. All three of us follow gaming to some sort, even productions of games, and I I don't know where people got this from, but some people were of the opinion that Boss Teams Halloween game, because of when they announced it, would be out for this Halloween. No, the Super Nintendo style 8-bit game, I guess regular Nintendo style 8-bit game. Is it an 8-bit game or a 16-bit game? It might be a
It looks like a
16-bit game.
16-bit.
I think it's a 16-bit. That is out this October. The asymmetrical horror game coming from Boss Teams. It might not just be that, by the way. There are rumors there will be a story mode of some sort in it, or levels of some sort in it for single player that John Carpenter is kind of helping them with. And I use kind of because for me, it's more of like a stunt thing. Like, hey, we can say John Carpenter's involved. How much input is he really giving? And honestly, how much input do you honestly want at this stage in his life? Um, and that's not to take shots, but I mean, just go take a look at certain takes George R. R. Martin's having right now. But that's a story for a different day and a different channel. Um, I, anyways, it's not coming this year, and I hate to be like the ball buster, backbreaker. I don't think it's coming next year either. I'll let you guys comment on whether we could see that game by Halloween season 2025. But for me, it sounds like the goal for the TV show is in and around fall 2026. And I'm not saying it lines up with the TV show, but considering that they're still in fairly early development of the game, um, to me, it's far more likely that this game comes out in 2026 around the time of the TV show than it does in 2025. And I mean, I heard straight from one of our sources that we use here that, while not official by any means, he also believed that there's almost no chance that that game's ready for next year. Johnny, I'll go to you first, and then Randy. Odds of this Halloween asymmetrical slash semi story game could be ready for release in 2025 versus 2026?
I mean, it all depends. It all comes down to how much they have to make from whole cloth. How much they have to create from the ground up from zero. Um, so that's where it's going to come from. If they don't have a lot to do, I don't know. I know they produced and published the Evil Dead game, but they didn't create. So I don't know how much of those assets they own or not.
Whole different
So,
game engine, I believe, too.
well, but it's easier to take the assets and move up than it is to create from scratch, because you just have to, you know, go through the bare recreations, not creating it from zero, right? So it's not such a huge jump taking something from 5 to 6 or vice versa. Or not vice versa, but going up, not down. So I think that's what it's going to come down to, is how much they have to create from scratch. Um, I'm optimistic for, end of next year. Just because it's a smaller studio, it's a smaller company, that they don't often do, like, we see the big game studios where they announce a game that's 6, 7 years out from coming out, and they don't care. Look at GTA, obviously, is the prime example of that. They've been teasing that game and dropping hints and trailers and videos for, 5, 6 years now at this point. So they can do that because they're a bigger studio. They have, they don't need to strike while the iron is hot. Smaller studios, they have to wait unless they're going the early access route, um, which I think is a possibility for a game like this. That you have an early access release that is sooner than everyone anticipates, and then you wait and get the full 1.0, a year later, 6 months later, 8 months later, even a few years later, because that's the way early access works. And I don't mind that. I like early access games, as long as they are upfront and open with the community and telling them what's coming, when it's coming, and actually delivering on those problems. Because I have no problem with early access. So I don't know. It depends on the route they take. I think early access is an option for a game like this because, asymmetrical games, you can release more barebone versions to start, as long as you have minimum unique characters, even as low as 4 or 5 or however many players this is going to be. If this is a 4v1 or a 5v1 or a 6v1, as long as you have that bare minimum of 7 characters, 6 normals and 1 Michael, you can release a bare bones versions of the game and add content as you go along. So as part of the pack, I'm obviously not talking about DLC. That's a separate issue altogether, obviously. But releasing core skins and characters and things like that is a route you can take in early access. So I don't know if they go that route. I could obviously see easily making the window for next Halloween. If they wait for a 1.0, then it's all about how far into production they are at this point, and they're not giving us any windows into that at this point. I think December we'll have a much better idea of how far into production this thing is, because I expect that the VGAs, likely you'll see something at that point, because that's just, it's the most logical place for games to, debut stuff and show stuff off, and it's the right place to the right time. So
The Acads also love opening their mouth in the month of October, even if it's in an unofficial capacity about
well, that's possible. And I
various
mean,
things.
I wouldn't be surprised to see, closer to Halloween, hear somebody make an announcement that a trailer at the VGAs or something like that. It's not uncommon for a month or two before somebody to be like, trailer for blank dropping at the VGAs, just because you want the most eyes on it. And for video gamers at this point, with E3 being what it is, as basically a non-factor, the VGAs is probably your most concentrated number of eyeballs in the video game sphere. So I think that's when we'll see it. That'll give us a much better barometer of where they are in production, how far they are, and what sort of release window we could be looking at.
Randy, how about you, man? 2025 versus 2026.
If if anything comes out in 2025, it's going to be like Johnny says. It'll probably be early access. It'll give the devs a chance to get feedback, to figure out what they need to add, what they need to take away, what they need to change before they roll out into a beta version of the game. Before we get to 1.0, you have to look at the success of smaller studios like N Night, who did The Forest, with Sons of the Forest and The Forest, how they released it in early access to give players a chance to get feedback so that they could tweak it, make changes as needed to kind of make sure once it did roll out, it was as bug free as humanly possible. But we all know that even in today's day and age with gaming, nothing's bug free from day one, even with AAA stuff. So I feel like that's wishful thinking, though, to think that something would come out next year, though. Depends on how, like Johnny said, depends on how far along they are in the development. Some game, depending on, and if they don't have a lot of manpower, it's gonna take 2 or 3 years before you really get anything. I mean, a good, think about how long it's taken GTA to come out for have their new game come out. You think about how 6 years ago Bethesda teased Elder Scrolls 6, and we still haven't seen anything since then. It's some of these games just need time to really, get things right. And with this, obviously with some of the AAA studios, they're gonna take their time, and some aren't. Where I'm, look at look at Activision and how they kind of push their devs and to get stuff out as quickly as possible, and they get that yearly Call of Duty release cycle, EA with Madden. But here, I think if they're really smart and just be very open and do their best to just communicate, similar to what a lot of the devs for Ubisoft, like for X Defiant, the devs are being very open, very honest. They're taking things into consideration. They're making tweaks as the players suggest it. Stuff like that. That's what we need out of this studio making this Halloween game. And I still think we're like 2 or 3 years off. But again, it's not out of the question to see early access next year at some point, just for people to at least get their hands on it.
I just want to see them do it right, there's already a lot of people, and I remember when we got the announcement about this, Johnny had joined us on air to talk about it, and we weren't sure what even we heard two games, right? Now, obviously, one of them is a cheap 16-bit game that can be thrown together, and if you're a Halloween diehard, you might be looking at the special content and the physical edition, which comes with the Evil Dead game, where you get some cool little trinkets and stuff. But honestly, kind of feels like a money grab to me. I'll wait to see if it goes on sale digital on the on one of the dashboards at some point for it. Probably makes me sound like a cop out Halloween fan, but I'm not paying an arm and a leg for a 16-bit game. Sorry. And then on the other front, like there's people not happy that the other game's going to be asymmetrical. Well, I still think there's a chance that you're getting a single player, somewhat of a story with that. The one thing we do know is in a statement, Malaka Cad said you'll have the opportunity to play through, previous Halloween movies, and it was definitely implied that you could change the outcome of some of those events. Um, but that to me lines up with asymmetrical too. You have a Halloween 1 map, play through it. Halloween 2 map, play through it. Halloween 4 map, play through it. You know what I mean? Um, and in terms of early access, yeah, like they might launch this thing with, an H1 map and an H2 map, and that's it. And you might have to wait a significant amount of time before you get anything else. I'm not saying like I wouldn't play it. I think it'd be fun to play. I hope it harkens back to the way Friday the 13th was, when it was in its heyday more than Texas Chainsaw. I really didn't like Texas Chainsaw. It wasn't terrible, but it didn't live up to expectations for me. That's my own problem. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I always say that it's best not to rush something rather than take your time with it, especially if it's what Randy said and you don't have a ton of people working on the game, then you want to do it right. Talking Star Wars says, would this game include Season of the Witch or Rob Zombie's movies? I have no idea. My hope would be if they're going to cover a bunch of the movies that they do find a way to do a Season of the Witch movie, and you have the androids, mandroids, robots, whatever you want to call them, in there, or Cochrane in there or something. And I'm not a big fan of the zombies movies, but if you're going to go out all out on one of these and do a bunch of different maps, then yeah, I would certainly hope they get represented because his Michael is very different from Michaels of other movies, right? So I can't say that they will be, but it'd be my hope that they'd be represented. Let's move on though, everybody, because we got to get to some Star Wars stuff here. Before we do, we have watch parties coming up. Only have dates for one of them at this point, but we do have most of our lineup here. This is what it's looking like. Halloween, 1978, John Carpenter's classic, will be done with Mr. Mike Bish and Jason Knight and myself. Halloween 2 will be done with Mike Bish. Those two will be watched on the same night. Might have to hit up Johnny for that one too, although I don't think he likes Halloween 2. We are looking for a third, though, to
I
dive into
actually
that.
haven't seen that in a very long time.
The hospital one?
Yeah.
I think the last time you seen it might have been a stream that we did on Facebook.
I don't think we did two. We did one. I don't remember doing two.
Maybe, I'm not sure. But anyways, Halloween 78 and Halloween 2 from 1981 will be done on September the 23rd. It's a Monday night. The streams start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and if all goes well, we'll be starting Halloween 2 by about 10:20, 10:25 and wrapping up around midnight. And then no dates for the rest of them. That will be the only doubleheader to my knowledge. We have Halloween 4 with Mike Bish, Matt, and myself. Halloween 5 will be done with Kieran and Randy. Thanks for volunteering for that one, Randy. um, Halloween Resurrection, which I'm sure will just be a wild time with Kieran, Johnny, and myself. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 with Jason Knight and Matt. Again, we have an editorial style video coming out on that movie in the next couple of days. Halloween 2018 is penciled in right now for Randy and Johnny. And then Halloween Kills, I have listed as a Fandom Empire reunion. All the guys that were a part of the Fandom Empire channel covering that content going into the movie. We're going to get as many of them as we can on just to reminisce about that while watching the movie, sitting back and having fun. The Nightmare File says you should get with this channel named I Like Scary. He loves Halloween. I don't know if I've heard of him. We got a bunch of content coming up though. Like um, we're gonna have Braden Timmons, who is doing The Last Nightmare Part 1 in October. We have James Grimm and Cole from Cole's Edits. They're doing Halloween Aftermath, a movie set between Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. We're going to have Craven Something Scary on here. We're going to have author of the Taking Shape 1 and 2 novels, Dustin McNeil, on here. So we do have a lot of guests coming up. And I can't promise that they'll be on Tuesdays. We're just going to take a look at the schedule and fit them in where we can and go from there. But yeah, a lot coming. Fellas, any thoughts on the watch party schedule before moving on?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around how you bamboozled me into Resurrection. I
Oh, it's going to be a throw egg at the screen type of stream.
I'm going to be
Mystery
chicken
Science
fried by the end of it. That's for sure.
Get a Mystery Science bitch. That's all you got to do.
Well, there you have it. That is our watch party lineup. By my count, that is 8 of the Halloween movies. So many more to go through as time goes on. Right now, I would not be shocked if Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 takes place sometime in November. And we'll see how the rest of them fall out. But yeah, be on the lookout for all those as well. Let's shift gears here, reset. That is going to do it for our Halloween horror and movie talk for this evening. We're going to gear up for Star Wars over the next 25, 30 minutes. Also, some housekeeping here since you two fellas are involved in this. Finally, after years of talking about it, we did it. Supernatural Revisited is a thing. It will air on the channel starting in the last week of September. We're recording episodes actively right now. We're recording episodes 3 and 4 this Thursday. 5 and 6 the following Thursday. I think Johnny's joining us for episode 5. Randy's going to be involved with that as well, as will Jade. Tommy and I have been having fun with it, and we put a lot of quality into the first 2 episodes. So a lot of information behind the scenes comes out there, how the episode did, who was involved in it, and so much more. And they're about a half an hour long. And yeah, the goal is to do 15 seasons, but the initial focus is just get through the Eric Kripke run and go from there. And we'll see where we're at. So yeah, Supernatural Revisited coming later this month to the channel. And as always, you can support us on Patreon, where we have an additional look at Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 coming later this week. Patreon.com/Fandom Haven. Without further ado, though, we're going to turn our attention over to some Star Wars talk. And more importantly, we've done the Haddonfield. Now let's get to the Beyond. Now, if you have a keen eye and you're watching us on a big screen, you might have just noticed that our background changed. It was Michael Myers, and it's now the one and only Dark Lord himself, Mr. Darth Vader, voiced by the iconic James Earl Jones. I had someone say to me yesterday that they thought James Earl Jones passed away a few years ago. And I do remember a story coming out a few years ago that people jumped on that they shouldn't have, saying he had passed when he hadn't. Obviously, he's been out of the Hollywood spotlight for a little bit now. He was 93 years old. Before we dive into like Star Wars specific stuff, fellas, I think it's important to talk about James Earl Jones, the person, the impact he had on not just the industry but fans. Johnny, I'm gonna pass it over to you. I'm sure you don't have anything written prepared, but just talk a little bit about James Earl Jones and the impact that he had on your life.
Well, I mean, it's been said by a great many. He's one of the voices of our childhood. The Lion King was a seminal classic in the heart of the Disney Renaissance that, for a lot of us was at the peak of our sort of Disney era. And his voice it doesn't matter what it is. His voice is just enrapturing. It will suck you in no matter what it is, be it a good movie or a bad movie. I mean, a bad movie narrated by James Earl Jones is better than some good movies, just based on his voice. And, he was a part of so many things from, our era as kids. Not just The Lion King, but The Sandlot, you know, uh, Field of Dreams. Those were all, peak movies in our youth. And then, some of the other classics he was in that. But for me personally, I love, I'm a huge Tom Clancy fan, so obviously I love the Jack Ryan movies, which he was a big part of, you know, uh, playing Admiral Greer. And I love Leslie Nielsen. I think he's fucking hilarious, one of the funniest guys in existence. So obviously the Naked Gun movies and having James Earl Jones in that third Naked Gun movie was amazing. I loved it because it sort of wrapped up so much of, my youth, but he's the voice. A lot of people today, they'd be like, Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman should narrate my life, but for our generation, that was James Earl Jones. He had that voice that he could read you a phone book and it would be amazing. So that's what he was. He's the voice of my youth. And that, you know, I'm going to quote a movie of James Earl Jones for James Earl Jones that perfectly encapsulates how I'm feeling right now. Heroes live forever, but legends never die. And James Earl Jones is a legend.
Randy, how about you? How did James Earl Jones touch your life, man?
Well, like Johnny, he's definitely a voice from my childhood. Um, obviously, tears were shed, things like that, because when you think about it, and it's kind of it's crazy to think it's been proven, but people that you hear all the time or see all the time, your brain kind of recognizes them as a friend. And losing, the voice of Darth Vader, and losing just the many characters that he portrayed throughout the years, whether it's, you're looking at something like Conan the Barbarian, which is one of the first live action movie I saw him in as a kid. But then, growing up, obviously The Sandlot, it's kind of hard to not, not think of him with that, or The Hunt for Red October. But obviously he's always going to be Darth Vader for me, but also it's just, you hear all the stories about just how much of a genuine person he was, and how, kind and giving he was. And it's the most talented people that are the most humble and the most gracious. And given his track record when it comes, whether it be plays, movies, narration, video games. I mean, I remember the first time I played Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun and going, holy shit, because I wasn't expecting it. I didn't, I completely caught me off guard. But also the fact that he took the time to, come back and become Simba again for Kingdom Hearts 2, or voice Darth Vader again in like the Lego Star Wars, that complete saga from 2007. Like, he just, it was amazing what he would just come and do, and the ways he would just kind of, just that nostalgia button that he would hit over and over again. And I will say, like, one of the funniest things I can remember was when he was on The Big Bang Theory, and he doing, ding dong ditch on Carrie Fisher. And that was like one of the highlights for me for that show. But also when I learned that that was the first time he ever met her, was on the set of The Big Bang Theory. I thought that just blew me away. But it's just, he had fun with it. He didn't have a problem just having fun with kind of being an exaggerated version of himself. But still, it hits hard. It's, I'm not going to be able to watch Star Wars the same again, knowing that he is no longer with us. But yeah, that's kind of how he affected me, though. It's something that I've had, since I was, what, the first Star Wars movie I remember seeing was Return of the Jedi when I was 5. So yeah, since 5 years old, that man's been a part of my life.
Basically your whole life. So Dean is not here at the moment. Dean has a open door to return and guest on certain things, but scheduling on top of other things led to Dean choosing to leave for now. So we respect his decision. Important to remember, though, that these shows didn't start with Dean. These shows started with this fella over here and some other people. But I'll tell you what, whether Dean chooses to return or not, I will say this about Dean, even though we're talking Star Wars and James Earl Jones at the moment. There are very few people as bright as Mr. Mean Dean Renner when it comes to physical media, and whether he does more on this channel in terms of that, or goes on to be able to do something on his own if he can fit it into his schedule. He should be doing something involving physical media, because I think he's better at it than mostly a good chunk of people out there on the internet. So that's what I'll say about that. James Earl Jones, just a few facts here for people. One, James Earl Jones, according to you, had a falling out. I have no idea who you are, but if you would like to, keep hiding behind a fake name, you feel free to go ahead and keep hiding behind a fake name. Shawnee, you still have permissions here. So, but anyway, a few facts about James Earl Jones. One, he was a stutterer, believe it or not. You'd never think it in a million years, but he was a stutterer. And if you watch the making of the Star Wars original trilogy, which I always forget the name of, but I think it's an incredible documentary. It goes through all
Empire of Dreams, isn't it?
Empire of Dreams. Um, James Earl Jones dives into it and talks about it, significantly. And it's just like for me, that's an inspiring story because there are people that stutter out there. My oldest son stutters a bit. He's worked very, very hard over the years to cover that up as best as he can, and most of the times he can. But for a lot of people, especially in today's day and age, they'll develop something like that or have it right from the get go and think, well, I can't do this or I can't do that. Well, newsflash, if James Earl Jones can, you can too. And, that's one thing I love. Like, we can talk about his iconic voices and his roles, but the ability to be able to go out there and, um, you know, do your part in the world, whether it's bus driver, pizza boy, construction worker, movie star, sound editor. There's a role for everybody out there, and I'm sure James Earl Jones had a bunch of people tell him he couldn't do this, he couldn't do that. Well, guess what? He became one of the most iconic voices in Hollywood, despite being a stutterer. That, to me, fellas, is an inspiring story. Um,
He's
oh,
in an elite group.
oh, for
He's one of
sure.
only he's one of only 14 people with an EGOT. For those unfamiliar with the term, that's an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. It's 14 people in all of history have that epitaph to add to their name. James Earl Jones is one of them.
Yeah. So that's impressive company. Do you have any of the other names?
I actually have them all as
Oh,
of the time.
let's
Yeah.
let's take a moment and acknowledge them.
He is joined by Richard Rogers, Barbara Streisand, Helen Hayes, Rita Moreno, Liza Minnelli, John Gielgud, Audrey Hepburn, Marvin Hamlish, Jonathan Tunick, Mel Brooks, Mike Nichols, Whoopi Goldberg, and Scott Rudin. That's 14 people with an E. I don't know if that number's gone up since that particular article was, or that addition was added to his IMDb page. I don't know. I don't know when that was written, if there's some sense then, but at that time that was written, he was one of only 14. And
That's
I don't think it
insane.
has.
Yeah, that's nuts. Another fact, and this was a small payday for even back then, but he agreed to do Star Wars for only $7,000. So, and when I say Star Wars, I'm talking Star Wars: A New Hope. So he got paid only $7,000 to come out and be a part of that, um, which is insane when you think about it. Even for back then, you know, probably signs that deal, and I'm guessing late '76, early '77, because on set they were using David Prowse's voice, which thankfully they did not keep. With all due respect to the late David Prowse. But yeah, interesting. Oh, well, okay, cool. Good for Freddie. We're here doing our thing. Hopefully, all those people are doing okay. Um, but anyway, um, so $7,000 to do Star Wars. I don't know what his deal was for Empire or Jedi, but there's another caveat there. Is he went out and literally asked George Lucas to not put his name in the credits for A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Now, I do believe if you go watch the movie on Disney Plus now.
He's been added in
Yeah,
the, I
for
believe the
sure.
special editions was when he was officially added in 97.
But in terms of in terms of strictly back then, 77, 80, probably all the way up into the early 90s, no credit for those two movies. That's remarkable. I get maybe not wanting the credit for A New Hope because you didn't know if it was going to land, but when A New Hope lands and it is the biggest thing ever at the time, by the way, the biggest movie ever. I believe it topped Jaws, which was the biggest prior movie to that. Um, you can't, nobody has the foresight to tell it's going to be the biggest movie ever. So I kind of understand that, okay, well, I'm just not going to take credit for this one. But when you redo your deal for Empire Strikes Back on the heels of success of Star Wars and you go, I'm good, I don't need a credit, that's something. Some thoughts on that, fellas?
He just shows his humility. That's what it came down to. Was he felt he personally felt that the voice of Darth Vader wasn't a large enough contribution to be credited. That's why David Prowse was in the credits, not him, which to me is it's so, it shows you a window into the person. We see the public profile, and we see him in media, and he's always been very humble and very downplaying of his own significance, but knowing that that's how he felt about what has now become inarguably one of the top 5 cinematic films in existence in Empire is just, I, if there's anyone in the credits who deserves to be there more than James Earl Jones, it's the big 3. Literally everyone else is less significant to the success of Empire than James Earl Jones.
No, I have to agree with you. Just because, yeah, it's when you talk about iconic, you can't, reference Star Wars without referencing Vader. And, even though, yes, Prowse was the physical version of Vader, it was the voice that gave Vader his power. And the fact that James Earl Jones was more than willing to just leave his name off the credits for the first 2 movies, considering Empire is one of the greatest movies of all time, uh, that says a lot of just about the person. And like Johnny said, it clearly he felt just being a voice actor at the time, which, let's be honest, back then voice acting was more for cartoons than anything else. Uh, yeah, he felt like it just wasn't something that he needed to have his name on. But clearly, that changed, and you know what? I'm glad it changed. I mean, it's awesome that he did it at the time, but now is that time when you know your legacy. That I mean, Vader is his, for the most part, is one of the biggest parts of his legacy. So I'm glad they changed it.
Um, there was another story I heard on him, and it's slipping my mind. But I would agree with that. Like, I'm not saying nobody else could have been the voice of Darth Vader. I think there are other options, but you know, it's you don't know, right? Like, someone else could have played Dr. Loomis in Halloween. Somewhat fuck, who was the guy that was supposed to play Indiana Jones before Harrison Ford?
Tom Selleck.
Yeah, like, could it have worked? Maybe, but it doesn't mean anything. So, it is what it is. We'll see how, he's remembered, not from our generation necessarily, but like, I have a 4-year-old. When he's 30, will he think as highly of James Earl Jones as we do? Maybe not, because there's 10,000 different Star Wars projects. Sorry, that's the other James Earl Jones point. It should be noted that prior to his passing, a few years prior to his passing, he did sign off on, made a very wealthy deal with Lucasfilm to be able to use his voice as that speech decoder thing they have, the AI speech thing. You'll notice that Darth Vader sounds way better in Obi-Wan Kenobi than in Rogue One. That's because Rogue One, you have a old and somewhat ill James Earl Jones really working through that to the best of his ability. and then Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi with the technology and where it is. Um, he he sounds more like he did in Empire in Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? So make no mistake, we haven't heard the last of James Earl Jones' voice. There's no way Lucasfilm's going to continue to go forward not using Darth Vader's voice at times. So that's cool that he did that, and it's cool for his family that they can still benefit from that. Um, but just an icon and a legend. And I don't know if everybody would agree with Johnny's take on Vader and Empire because Harrison Ford has such an iconic role in that movie.
Well, I said besides the big three.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go even more than the big three, man. Like Empire, in my opinion, we'll get into the quotes here to end the show, but has the at that time in history the biggest twist in cinema history.
Yep.
Period. You know, kept secret from everybody to a point. Harrison Ford turns to Mark Hamill at the premiere, and he's like, "What the fuck, kid? You didn't tell me that." So like just his impact on cinema will be you know viewed forever. And Mufasa too. We have a Mufasa movie coming out, which he's obviously not in, but like without his portrayal of that character way back in the early 90s, that movie's not in existence coming out. And I'm excited to go see that. Now I'll be seeing it from sort of a different perspective, seeing it from like, hey, we're here not just for this Mufasa movie and to take my kids to it, but it's kind of a tribute to James Earl Jones. I'm sure, being it's a Disney movie, being I believe Favreau has a little bit of involvement in it. Um, there'll be some sort of tribute to James Earl Jones there, and I would hope there'll be a tribute to James Earl Jones tacked on to the end of Skeleton Crew as well when we get to credits there. So yeah, look, fellas, we're running out of time here. I was going to do this one at a time, but R.I.P. indeed, Joel. And yes, Mark Hamill did say that yesterday. Um, yeah, it's Hollywood's got an outpouring of support right now in favor of it. So, um, rest in peace, James Earl Jones. And in tribute to that, I wish we could spend more time with it, but we got to get wrapping up here. Let's do our top three iconic Star Wars lines from Darth Vader, aka Mr. James Earl Jones. I feel like we all have. Do we all have the same number one?
I didn't do them in like tiered order.
You didn't do them in tier
So
order? Okay.
I
So
mean, I
why
would
don't we?
assume we have the same number one.
I would assume that whatever your number one is on my list.
My number one, like it's not really. It's the whole. As soon as Luke gets his hand cut off, that moment to the "I am your father," right? And we'll touch on that at the end and everything that's said there. But here, I'll go first here since I have it on my phone. Um, the first one, and it really made me like his character in the first movie. He says to the one admiral that was giving him shit on the first Death Star, um, about his sorcery doesn't scare him, etc. And Vader goes, "Don't be too proud of this technological terror you constructed. The ability to destroy a planet or even a whole system is insignificant next to the power of the Force." The delivery of that line, in my opinion, in that movie was the stamp of "Do not fuck with this guy, or you're doomed." I mean, we already seen him choke someone out, but like without having to be physical. Obviously he does get physical afterwards there, but it was just such an incredible delivery and really stood the test of time for me. And then the other one is such a small thing, right? There's almost like humor in it. Darth Vader, and you hear humor come through James Earl Jones' voice. He's fighting Luke on Bespin, right? And Luke's climbing up the carbon freeze hose and does the little flip, and he goes, "Impressive, most impressive." Like, and it's not like yeah, he's kind of complimenting him. He knows it's his kid, but there's some humor there too. There's some, Karen's not here to shit on this, but there's some Anakin Skywalker there in that line without anybody ever having
It's
voiced Anakin
condescending
Skywalker.
in such a way that's perfect for Darth Vader.
100%. Johnny?
Well, I ended at 4. Okay, I couldn't whittle it down. I couldn't decide which one to knock off the list, so I ended at 4. Obviously, no, I am your father. Obviously, so I'll go with the 3 that you haven't said yet, and they're just it's the delivery, it's the James Earl Jones, it's the voice, it's all of those things together that make these so perfect. And the first one for me is it's Empire. It's him and Lando. I'm altering the deal. Pray, I don't alter it any further. It just the delivery of it is so ominous. Like, don't fuck with me. I'm letting you live. Be happy. And it just I loved it, you know? And the other two are sort of more in the funny vein. You know, not funny, but funny in that James Earl Jones kind of way. And the next one for me is uh be careful not to choke on your aspirations. You know, it just it's hard not to laugh. And of course, my last one, it's it's peak Darth Vader. It has both that quibble of humor, that ominous seriousness. I find your lack of faith disturbing. That's my top 3.
Randy?
Yeah. Well, Johnny pretty much has the same ones I do for the most part. At number 3 was be careful not to choke on your aspirations, because to me, even though yes, it's a newer Star Wars movie, there is that little bit of humor in it, but it's the idea of also he's choking a bitch out at the time while he's doing it. So how Darth Vader is that? Uh, and for me, my number 2 was I find your lack of faith disturbing, because it was the tone. It was just like, oh, you're talking shit about the Force. Okay, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. And then obviously, I think all our number ones are the same. No, I am your father, and with the greatest twist in cinema history, delivering the quintessential Vader line. I mean, it all goes together so well.
Now, we'll won the stream on this one. Luke, I am your father. To me, it's not just that. It's Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. Luke has his delivery. No, I am your father. Um, even his line before that with the Luke, don't let yourself be destroyed as Obi-Wan did. Like, it's not just the I am your father, it's the whole delivery of dialogue from the second Luke loses his hand that sells that whole scene.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying no other actor could have done it, but boy, even to this day in 2024, might be the most iconic lines of delivery ever made.
You're absolutely right. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's for cinematic monologues, it's one of the best. You know, because it's so, like you said, it's so shocking. You know, for those of us that got to experience it without knowing that they were father and son, it's a moment that, like you said, it's one of, if not the best cinematic curveballs in history, because nobody sees it coming. And it's so out of left field. There's no hints, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing that leads you to that hint. um in sorry. um it's just so perfect, so out of left field, and it cements the moment as something that will stick with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. It's iconic. It's legendary. It's one of those ones where we're going to be long gone, and they're still going to be talking about it. It's because it's just one of those it's one of those moments in cinema history that I don't see how you could ever replicate it or replicate the feeling. I mean, are people going to try? Of course, people are going to try. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it. And like, Sean, like you were saying, the delivery and everything leading up to it. I mean, even think about, you can take it a step back further when, you can give David Prowse credit for his acting when, Vader's like, you don't know the power of the dark side, just the way he was shaking his fist, but the conviction that James Earl Jones gave into that to kind of help strengthen his belief in the dark side of the force to Luke. It's that whole scene on the bridge. It's kind of like that one perfect moment that you can't replicate it. You'll never be able to duplicate it, but your people are going to try, and they're going to try to pay homage to it as best they can. But it's at this point in time, even like I said, once we're finally long gone, that scene is going to be probably talked about for long after we're gone.
Rest in peace to a legend, James Earl Jones. Um, you know, eventually, I don't think we've ever done Star Wars watch parties on the channel of the cinematic movies. Might be something in store to do one day down the road for sure. Um, but until then, it's time to wrap up. We'll be back next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, talking Halloween horror movies, and then some Star Wars to wrap things up. I believe on the Star Wars side of the show, we will be giving our pitches of what we would do with a new movie with the big three. Now with this happening, makes me wanna. What would our idea be for a Darth Vader movie? So, we'll see what happens. Johnny, where can everybody find you at, man?
Oh man, you can find me here, there, and everywhere. Um, of course, over on twitch.com/pros before pros. Thursday night, we're going to stream the second part of Outlaws. So, yeah, keep your eye on that. I don't know what time, but it'll be Thursday night. So, head over to Twitch, drop a follow, and you'll see when we go live.
Randy, how about you, man? What do you got going on?
So you can find me over on Twitter, X. I still say it still should be just Twitter, but whatever. At Giggity Giles, trying to post a little bit more, trying to get out there, especially help us out here. I'm on Instagram, but I don't post anything. I'm just that guy who follows all the things I like. Starting this week, recording the first episode of the Sports Brew since the NFL season's kicked off. We're gonna be recapping all of Week 1 and probably previewing Week 2. So just Google search Sports and Brew on your favorite podcatcher and have fun with it.
That's going to do it for us. Like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications to all, and we will see you on the flip side. Until then, this has been Haddonfield and Beyond.